Hey there nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Chiefskate, and we are back with an episode of Way of the Underhive. This is a series that's dedicated to helping brand new players to Necromunda build their starting rosters and learn more about the game mechanics of their favorite gangs. And on this episode, we will be discussing the Outcast gangs. Now, specifically, the reason why we're talking about Outcast gangs is because with Necromunda Ash Waste being dropped, a lot of the game mechanics for different gangs in the Underhive have changed somewhat drastically for some of the gangs heading out into the Ash Waste, and the Outcasts are actually one of those gangs that could be drastically impacted by the new Ash Waste game mechanics that's available out there. So because of that, what we'll be doing in this video, we'll be talking about the strengths and weaknesses of playing an Outcast gang. We will talk about the fighters that you recruit in your gang, the play style that they have, as well as provide other critical information that you can use in your campaign as well. At the same time, we will also include 3 different rosters that you can use to start off your campaign in the Ash Waste, and those rosters are at 1,400 credits apiece. They include fighters as well as vehicles. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about how you can play Outcasts in the Ash Waste of Necromunda. Alright, so first of all, let's go and talk about the strengths of playing an Outcast gang. Now, when it comes to Outcast gangs, they're potentially one of the most powerful starting gangs that you can actually play in a campaign. And the reason why is because of a couple of things. One, they do have access to Dramatis Personae as leaders, so right at the start you could have really experienced fighters with really decent stats and excellent equipment, and they could be the leaders of your gangs, and they can advance like normal fighters can over the course of the campaign with different weapons, different skills, etc. At the same time, you also have access to delegation gangs as well. The delegation gangs are the delegations that merchant guilds, criminal organizations, as well as noble houses send in order to supply your gangs during an alliance system. Well, instead of doing that, you can actually have these guys actually form the leaders, champions, and gangers of your gang right off the bat as well. So get excellent sets of equipment and skills right from the start. At the same time, you can take advantage of the new weird disciplines that came out in the Book of the Outlands, because now you can have your champions and leaders have weird archetypes, which means they have psychic abilities. At the same time, if you're looking for something that's extremely different and very unique, diversity is your friend in this gang. There's a lot of different combinations that you can actually put together. Now, I will tell you now as the viewer, for this specific video, I'll be focusing on just true Outcast gangs, meaning that I'll be using mainly items from the Outcast rosters, as well as a few Dramatis Personae to build the list on this one. If you're looking for starting delegation gangs, like you want to do a merchant guild delegation gang, or a criminal organization delegation gang, or even a noble house delegation gang, I will be doing future videos just focusing on those topics specifically, and I'll actually give you examples of rosters that you can use from each of the different delegations from each of those sets. But on this one though, it's purely just straight up Outcasts with maybe a few Dramatis Personae as their leaders. Alright, so aside from strengths, there's also some weaknesses of playing an Outcast gang as well. So one of the things about this, if you decide to play an Outcast gang, you're extremely limited on the alliances you can take if you decide to use that alliance mechanic in your campaign. For example, if you're a CLANLESS affiliated Outcast gang, you can't take any allies at all. Or if you decide to be a delegation gang of some sort, you can't take any allies either. Or for example, let's say you want to be a House Goliath Outcast gang, you can only take alliances associated with those houses, for example. So if you're really big on the alliance mechanics, this gang might not be the one for you. At the same time, if you're one of those players, or you really like the idea of WYSIWYG, that acronym basically means what you see is what you get, which means you want the actual specific model that Games Workshop or Forge World actually manufactures for that fighter, then this can potentially be a very expensive gang, especially if you want to play WYSIWYG. You just want to, like for example, if you want to play a Water Guild delegation gang, so you have to buy the Water Guild delegation from Forge World, etc. It could be actually very, very expensive to do so. Okay. Now, if you're of course used to just converting or making your own, or even proxying, you'll be perfectly fine on that one. At the same time, delegations as well as Dramatis Personae do cost a lot of credits to field, so because I will be eating a big chunk of your credit allowance for your fighters. At the same time, your hive scum as well as your champions are pretty mediocre in terms of their stats and the things that they can do, so that is also a thing you got to also take into consideration as well. And probably the worst one of all, of course, is the balance bandwagon. I've seen this a lot at my local gaming store with people who decide to play delegation gangs or Outcast gangs. A lot of immature players they fight against complain about how overpowered or OP they are because they're doing an Outcast gang, which I never understood, because if that's a concern for you, if you feel that way and you're part of the whole balance thing, why don't you just play a delegation gang in that case? But that's just my personal opinion about it. So if you're one of those kind of people who hate getting grief from the balance bandwagon, prepare to hear from it, okay? So I will warn you guys that now. So now that we're done talking about the strengths and weaknesses of playing an Outcast gang, let's go ahead and talk about their individual fighters. Alright, so first of all, let's talk about the Underhive Outcast leader. This is perhaps the most important character in your guys' list because the Outcast leader pretty much sets the tone in terms of alliances, affiliations, etc. that your gang will actually be able to have for your Outcast gang. So your Underhive Outcast leader costs 125 credits for base. Now, just like a Venator gang, your Underhive Outcast leader actually has 4 different stats that they can choose from with different values associated with them. And each of these different stats is designed for a specific role within your gang. So let's go and talk about that real quick. So when it comes to this gang leader, you basically have 4 different stats or 4 flavors that you can have. The first one is what I like to call the Xeno stats, which is basically made for shooting. It has very much the same kind of statistics you'd imagine that an Eldar alien would have, for example, in a gang. You have the versatile stat line, which is the one I think is like kind of like in the middle of the road. Pretty decent stats through all, very versatile and flexible kind of roles and responsibilities you want to give those guys. Then we have another stat I like to call the combat stat. It's more geared for close combat and also a little bit tougher. They also got some pretty good psychology stats. And then finally, what I like to call the resilient stat line, and that's the one where it's meant for taking the most punishment. So let's go and talk about that real quick. So for the Xeno stat line, you're talking about a 7-inch movement, 4+ weapon skill, 2+ ballista skill, 3 strength and 3 toughness, 2 wounds, 3 initiative, 2 attacks, 5+ for leadership, 4+ for cool, 7+ for willpower, and 5+ for intelligence. So this is a very good stat line. With that 7-inch movement, you're going to be outpacing almost everybody, and you'll be able to put yourself in position in order to attack your opponents. This could be a really good shooting focus kind of build, especially if you use like running gun, for example, or hip shooting. That way you can move like 14 inches, and then during your movement you can blast somebody with like a special weapon, for example. So that could be a really good build for you, especially if you want to do a more ranged combat leader. Now for the versatile stat line, this fighter has a 6-inch movement. They have 3+ weapon skill, 3+ ballista skill. They have 3 strength, 3 toughness. They have 2 wounds, 3+ initiative, 3 attacks, which is not bad. They also have 6+ leadership, 7+ cool, 6+ willpower, and 4+ intelligence. Now this stat is, as like I said before, is a versatile stat line. You could do close combat and shooting very well. You could argue you can do close combat just a little bit better because you do have those 3 attacks base. But at the same time, though, you could do kind of like a mixed fruit situation. In this kind of situation, I recommend giving like a good close combat weapon and a good shooting weapon of some sort. Run around, cause all kinds of problems. That 6-up movement's really going to help you out. Same thing with that 3+ initiative. And at the same time, they got some really good stats for cool as well as willpower. Now for your combat stat line, this one's geared for more close combat. It has a 5-inch movement, so it has 2+ weapon skill, 4+ ballista skill. They have 4 strength, 3 toughness, 2 wounds, 4+ initiative, 3 attacks, 6+ leadership, 6+ cool, 4+ willpower, and 7+ intelligence. Now, as weird as it may sound, the combat stat line for your Outcast leader is really good for doing close combat, but when it comes to your archetypes, and we'll talk about this a little bit better, a little more detail in a second, it actually makes a really good character to use the weird archetype, which means that you can actually have access to psychic powers. With that 4-up willpower test, you can actually get a lot of psychic abilities off. So, and yes, you still have a 4-up ballista skill too, so they're not slouches when it comes to shooting either. The main thing that's actually a big draw for the people is the 5-inch movement, the 4 strength, as well as the 3 attacks. That's the reason why everyone likes to call this one the combat stat line. And then lastly, we have what's called the resilient stat line. The resilient stat line consists of a 4-inch movement, 3+ weapon skill, 4+ ballista skill, 3 strength, 4 toughness, and here's the kicker, this person's got 3 wounds as well. On the flip side though, they only got a 5+ initiative. And they only have 2 attacks. They have 6+ for leadership, 4+ for cool, 6+ for willpower, as well as 5+ for intelligence. So this is another interesting stat line as well. It could actually be pretty good to use weird powers if you want to with that 6+ willpower. That's kind of nice. However, the big draw for this one is the 4 toughness and the 3 wounds. This person can take a lot of punishment. You can build them to still be a shooter or a close combat fighter if you want to, so that part's kind of nice as well. And like I said before, when it comes to your Outcast leader, they're very versatile in terms of archetypes and affiliations. When you build a leader for your gang, and as well as your champions, you have to take what's called an archetype. And basically they're like character traits, narratively speaking, that your character has. And based on the archetype that you have for your leader and for your champions, it impacts what kind of skills they have for both primary as well as secondary skills. Affiliations also have a big impact on what alliances you can take, if any, if you decide to take an affiliation. So like I said before, they're extremely diverse. They can fulfill a lot of different roles depending on the archetypes, affiliations, and the equipment you want to equip your leader with, and they can fulfill almost any kind of role that you can imagine for your Outcast gang. So in this part, we're going to do a little bit more detail into the archetypes. So let's go and talk about archetypes real quick. And like I said before, archetypes are important because they impact your leader on their primary and their secondary skills. You basically have 5 archetypes you can choose from. The first one is the Brawler archetype, and the Brawler archetype, you have Ferocity, Brawn, as well as Leadership being your primaries, with Agility and Combat being your secondaries. So those Strength skills, as well as those Ferocity skills, are going to be very, very important for the Brawler build. Now the next one is called the Gunslinger archetype, and for their primaries they have Leadership as well as Shooting and Agility as their primaries, while Cunning as well as Savant are their secondaries. So you get really good access to the shooting skills, Gunfighter, Trick Shot, Fast Shot. Those are all really powerful skills. At the same time, you also have the nice agility skills so that we can go even further. For example, if you put Sprint on the Xenos stat line for your leader, you can move up to 21 inches and shoot along that route. Let's say, for example, if you manage to get hip fire, for example. So that'd be really, really devastating combination there. Now, of course, you have the Survivor stat line. For their primaries, they have Combat, Ferocity, as well as Leadership, while Agility and Brawn are their secondaries. So if you're looking for someone who's really good in close combat, closing the distance, get those additional strength and attacks on their characteristics, be able to withstand being shot at and pinned, that's probably going to be the one that you want. Now, the next one is called the Mastermind archetype. For their primary skills, they have Cunning, Leadership, as well as Savant, while Agility and Shooting are their secondaries. So the Mastermind build is good for support characters. So for example, if you want to help out with ammo rolls, or to patch up your enemy fighter, your friendly fighters when they get wounded with Medicae, or create additional credits, then the Savant line would be good for you. If you're looking for a guy who can infiltrate and be a big gun assassin, for example, or someone who can interrupt enemy activations with Overwatch, this would be the one for you. So the Mastermind archetype is good if you want your leader to have more of a supporting role rather than an action role like shooting or combat. And then lastly, you have the Weird archetype. And for the Weird archetype, they only have Leadership as their primary with Cunning as their secondary. And the reason why is because they can choose weird powers in place of their skills. And now that we have all those brand new weird disciplines that came out from the Book of the Outcasts, this is actually a very viable action, especially if you want to spam those psychic abilities. Like I said, giving a weird archetype to the combat stat line with that 4+ willpower, a very deadly combination if you want to use psychic abilities for your ranged attacks. For example, you can use Pyromancy, for example, to set your opponents on fire with that 4+ willpower. So it's kind of a really cool combination that way as well. Alright, so let's go and give a quick little review about affiliations real quick. So like I said before, while archetypes would actually impact your ability to take skills as primary secondary skills, the affiliations do a couple of things. First of all, they affect what weapons and equipment you can purchase right off the bat. Okay, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail here in a second. At the same time, depending on your affiliation, it also can choose what kind of delegations you can include in your gang and the alliances you can make as well. And these things all have really big impacts. For example, if you're a clanless gang, right, for example, you cannot make any additional options for purchasing war gear. And at the same time, you can't actually ally yourself with anybody ever at all. So that part is kind of rough. However, the nice thing about being a clanless gang is that you don't suffer any from law-abiding or outlaw statuses, so that part's kind of nice as well. At the same time, you're free to hire any outlaw or law-abiding hired guns that you want to as well. So that's the kind of like the nice thing about being an Outcast gang. You can't make any alliances, but you have the most flexibility, especially if law-abiding or outlaw statuses is a big impact in your campaign. So that's the reason why you might want to play those. Clan House Outcasts, for example, can take the weapons and equipment that are available to the different house-specific gangs. So for example, let's say that you're a Van Sar Outcast gang. You can take all the equipment options and things of that nature, exotic beasts, etc. that a Van Sar gang can take. At the same time, you can also you can only take the strong alliances they have. So for example, with Van Sar, going back to that, the alliances they can pretty much make for the guild anyways is the Promethean Guild, or the House Catalus Noble Guild, or whatever the case may be. So whatever your strong alliances options are for that house, that's the only alliances you can make. Now, for example, merchant guilds, for example, you can choose the same kind of shopping list of items that are available for those delegations. At the same time, they can also buy cult icons for the gangs as well, and they can only make alliances with members of the merchant guild. That is, of course, unless you're a delegation gang, then you can't make any alliances at all. Same kind of rules apply to criminal organizations as well. They can do exactly the same way that way. You choose one of those delegations to be the core of your gang, or the shopping lists for that, and say the noble houses. It goes exactly the same way for them as well. Now, if you do take a delegation to make a core of your gang for the merchant, the criminal, or the noble house outcast gangs, you can't make any alliances if you do that. So just FYI, and be aware of that. Alright, so now that we're done talking about that, let's talk about Dramatis Personae leaders real quick. So now Dramatis Personae, which were the special characters and the higher guns that you hire for your gang, they can now be gang leaders, which is actually kind of cool. So you could take those guys, they have their stats and their cost. Their cost is what's going to cost, is what's going to take away from your roster when you put these guys in. At the same time, not only can you take these guys, you could also give them archetypes for them, as well as affiliations for them. And now once you get that completed with, they can gain experience and they can also purchase new war gear as the campaign develops, which is actually kind of cool. So you can have fighters who have better stat lines, better equipment, better skills, and better special rules right at the start of your campaign, which kind of gives you a leg up over everybody else. And this is why the members of the balance bandwagon freak out whenever you see this, because like, oh, that's not fair, and they like to pitch a fit about everything. But you know, you're also paying like several hundred credits for one guy. For example, if you take Cal Jericho, the bounty hunter special character as your leader, he's 400 credits just by himself. So that's almost like what? That's almost a third of your operating costs to build up your gang, so you are paying through the teeth for it. Now, there is one ridiculous rule that I don't understand why they put this on here, and that is, okay, so you have the equipment that the actual Dramatis Personae guy comes with, right? You can't purchase new gear for them at the start of the campaign unless you get rid of all of their gear. So let's go back to Cal Jericho, for example. He comes with flak armor, for example, and he also has twin master-crafted last pistols and a dueling saber. But let's say, for example, we want to give him an armored undersuit or give him mesh armor instead of flak armor. Well, according to the way the rules are written, that means all of his equipment, all of his weapons, they go away. The only thing he gets is mesh armor, and he still costs you 400 credits. I personally think that's a ridiculous rule, and I don't actually I don't follow that rule of my campaign and in my arbitrations. I tell my friends, forget that nonsense, just buy extra stuff you want for them right off the bat. Because think about that. Logically, it doesn't make sense. Imagine in your mind you're role-playing as Cal Jericho, and you're like, oh wow, I have all these weapons and equipment, but since I want that mesh armor, I guess I gotta take my stuff that I've had my entire life and put it away and not use it just because I want mesh armor. It doesn't make sense, right? So that's why I think it's a ridiculous rule, and I totally ignore it. And that's for that reason alone. Just because in real life, you wouldn't do that. So that's where it comes with your Dramatis Personae as your leaders. Alright, the next fighter we're going to talk about real quick are your Outcast champions. These guys cost 60 credits apiece. For their stats, they only have one set of stats. Let's talk about that real quick. They have 5-inch movement, 3+ weapon skill, 4+ ballistic skill. They have 3 strength, 3 toughness, 2 wounds, 4 initiative, 1 attack, 6+ for leadership, 7+ for cool, 8+ for willpower, as well as 8+ for intelligence. Now, when it comes to your Outcast champions, their stats is only one stat, but it's actually a pretty versatile stat line. It's very similar to what Warlock Road Sergeants actually have. So because they're kind of mediocre that way, they can do several jobs pretty well. They can be close combat, they can be support, they can be shooters if you want them to be. So that's the thing about them. Now, unfortunately for them, when it comes to their archetypes, the archetypes really limit the kind of skills they get. They only come with one primary and one secondary skill, depending on the archetype that they have. For example, if you just say use the Brawler archetype, their only primary is Brawn, while their secondaries are Ferocity and Leadership. For Gunslingers, their primary is Shooting, with Leadership and Agility as their secondary. For Survivors, Ferocity is their primary, with Combat and Leadership being their secondaries. For Masterminds, their Cunning is their primary, followed by Leadership and Savant for secondary. And then for Weird Powers, of course, the Weird Powers are primary, with Cunning and Leadership as secondary. Unfortunately, no single archetype has the Combat primary as a primary skill, which I thought was kind of weird. So because of that, you won't be able to make like a really powerhouse close combatant, at least not yet. So that's the problem when it comes to your Outcast champions. Now you might be wondering, well, if that's the case, Commander Chiefskate, why should I take an Outcast champion? The reason why is because you can take one Outcast champion for every 3 Outcast hive scum that you have in your gang. So for example, let's pretend you have 9 hive scum, you could have 3 champions. 12 hive scum, you have 4 champions. So there's no cap to the number of champions that you could actually have in your gang, and that's the reason why you want them so badly. Now, there is some caveats, of course. They can take any weapons or equipment they want to listed on the trading post, but they can only go up to a rarity value of 8. So it does kind of limit the stuff they can take, but there's still a lot of great equipment that you can get for your champions with a rarity value of 8 or less. So I wouldn't really consider that too much of a handicap. Alright, so the last fighter we're going to talk about real quick is your Outcast Hive Scum. These guys cost 30 credits apiece. They have a movement stat of 5 inches with 4+ weapon skill, 4+ ballistic skill, 3 strength, 3 toughness, 1 wound. They have 4 initiative, 1 attack. They have 8 leadership, 8 cool, 8 willpower, as well as 8 intelligence. So, these are your classic Hive Scum. You know them, you love them, and they're mediocre at the best of times. But that's not a bad thing, not necessarily, because that means since they're so mediocre, you can kit them out for whatever you want them to do. They can be shooters, they can be grenade throwers, they can be human shields, they can be close combat fighters, they can ride dirt bikes and take out people that way. It's really up to you how you want to actually kit out your Outcast Hive Scum. So because of that, they're actually quite diverse that way, and they actually have a pretty good starting equipment. Assuming, of course, you don't take an affiliation of some sort. For example, one of the nice things I did is I actually took a House Escher affiliation for my Outcast campaign my Outlanders campaign that we did. So I was able to get 5 credit lasguns and buy hotshot power packs from them at a really low price for these guys. So that's an example how they could be really good. Now, there is one negative about Outcast Hive Scum, and that is that you cannot start with specialists in your campaign. So unlike other house gangs, for example, you can at least get one fighter who's a specialist. You can't do that with Outcasts. They have to be promoted to that first, which is not as bad as it may sound, because, you know, these guys will be leveling up on the regular, so that's not much of a handicap as far as I'm concerned. Especially if you get some powerful Dramatis Personae or some kind of delegation in your gang, that could really offset that handicap. So those are your Outcast Hive Scums. Now, the last thing we'll talk to you about before we actually head off to the actual gang list is a little bit about delegation gangs. Now, like I said before at the beginning of the video, I'm not going to have any delegation gang rosters in this video, and the reason why is because I'm actually going to make a video for each of the different Outcast delegation gangs that you can take later on in this series, so that's the reason why I'm not going to spend so much time on it. However, just to give you guys an idea of how a delegation gang works, what you do is you pick a guild, criminal, or noble house to form your gang, that delegation, right? So, for example, let's say you're taking the Pyromantic Conclave, for example, for your gang. So you buy the Pyromantic Conclave from the Promethean Guild to be the core of your gang. The Pyrocane Lord will be your leader. The Pyro Major will be one of your champions, and your Cinders will be your gangers. Okay, that's how it works. So for your champions and your leaders, you'll need to pick archetypes as well as affiliations for them. So that part is really, really cool. And same thing with your champions. They also get archetypes as well. Now, when it comes to your gang level fighters, so let's go back to our 2 Cinders, for example. When it comes to the skills that they can take, they're exactly the same as Outcast Hive Scum that they can normally take. So, for example, Outcast Hive Scum can take Cunning as their primary, with Ferocity as their secondary, so your Cinders will have exactly the same thing. Alright, when it comes to using those delegations on that one. Now, the nice thing about picking a delegation gang is you can start off with fighters with better stats, better equipment, better skills, and special rules at the start of your campaign. However, there are some caveats to that. If you take a delegation gang, you cannot make any alliance whatsoever. You can still hire brutes, you can still hire hanger-ons, and bounty hunters and additional hive scum if you want to, but you can't take any alliances from the noble houses, the merchant guilds, or the criminal alliances for obvious reasons. And once again, there is a ridiculous rule for these guys, and I thought this is really stupid that they did this, but once again, the same ridiculous rule that's with Dramatis Personae also applies to these guys as well. It's kind of like you can't purchase new gear at the start of the campaign for these guys without replacing all of their gear. So, for example, going back to my Pyro Major example, he comes with a mesh armor and refractor field as well. Refractor field as well as a flamer and a Stubgun and a cult icon. But let's say I want to buy mesh armor from him to give him better armor save. You don't get all the other equipment he came with. You only get the mesh armor to start with. And that, to me, is just kind of stupid. Because, once again, realistically, that doesn't make sense. No Pyro Major in real life will give up their flamer, their Stubgun, and their cult icon and their refractor field and put that to the side just to wear some mesh armor and have to buy all new equipment. That's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. All right, no one would ever do that in real life, and I don't think it would actually work in a fictional setting either. It's kind of like, oh, I got new stuff. I guess I got to get rid of the old stuff. You know, it's ridiculous that way. So let's go and talk about the very first list I would offer you guys. I call it the Mercator Umbras list. It is a clanless affiliated Outcast gang at 1,400 credits. It's led by Hagar Freelords, which costs 180 credits. This person, the Dramatis Personae, that you can get from the Book of the Outlands book. You're going to give him the Gunslinger archetype. He's got mesh armor, twin plasma pistols, Respirator, and the Overseer skill. You are going to give him the Gunfighter skill because he's a Gunslinger archetype, and he already comes with the X-Guild or Armories as well as well-connected special rules. After that, you'll have 2 Outcast champions. The first one is going to cost you 180 credits. This fighter has Gunfighter archetype with mesh armor, plasma gun, Stubgun, as well as a fast shot ability. And Outcast champion number 2 will cost you 145 credits. They'll come with Mastermind archetype, mesh armor, grenade launcher, frag and crack grenade, Stubgun, as well as the Overwatch skill. After that, you got 4 Hive Scum that you guys will be recruiting. Hive Scum number 1 is going to cost you 125 credits. They have a hazard suit, as well as sawed-off shotgun, flail, and riding a Waster's dirt bike, and the exact same thing is going to happen for Hive Scum number 2. Hive Scum number 3 is going to cost you 70 credits. They got a hazard suit, Stubgun with dum-dum rounds and a flail, and exactly the same thing will happen for Hive Scum number 4. After that, you'll have 2 Scum Racers. Scum Racer number 1 is going to cost you 225 credits. This person's got a medium vehicle, custom vehicle with smoke vents, a transport bed, as well as a boarding plank. And then Scum Racer number 2 is going to cost you 280 credits. This fighter is going to be driving a Walker custom vehicle with extra armor, a transport bed, smoke vents, as well as a mining laser. Now, this Outcast list is designed for maximum offensive capabilities while generating income for your gang. The key is Hagar Freelord with his well-connected special rule. He will be able to generate D6 times 10 credits for your gang at the end of each battle, right off the bat. At the same time, you'll have easier access to more deadly weapons with his X-Guild or Armories special rule, which means that you must subtract 2 from the rarity of all weapons on the trading post. So that part is awesome as well. Now, this list also features 4 vehicles in this list. You have 1 custom medium vehicle that will do most of your transportation, 1 custom walker vehicle to do some long-range shooting with heavy weapons, and 2 wasters dirt bikes to finish off your gang, your enemy's fighters. Now, this gang consists of 3 fire teams, 1 support fire team, and 2 assault fire teams. Your support fire team consists of Scum Racer number 2, Champion number 1, and Champion number 2. This fire team's job is to engage your enemies by opening fire with heavy weapons against your targets. The walker's ability to make unlimited turns will allow the vehicle's mining laser to target enemy vehicles as well as destroy them. Meanwhile, Champions number 1 and 2 engage lighter enemy vehicles or dismounted fighters by using their plasma gun and grenade launcher to inflict damage. The walker's smoke vents will make sure that your enemies have a -1 to hit against them when they're trying to shoot at them, which should help us survive longer, and the extra armor upgrade will also make the walker a little bit more resilient. Now, as the campaign develops, I highly suggest that you hire more hive scum with long-range weapons to go along with this walker. I suggest hotshot last guns with telescopic sights. Those things end careers. At the same time, you got that grenade launcher to interrupt enemy activations, and you got that 2-shot ability with the plasma gun from Champion number 1. Now, Assault Team Fire Team number 1 consists of Hagar Freelord, Hive Scum number 3, 4, as well as Scum Racer number 1. Now, this fire team's job is to pursue enemy vehicles. With its high speed and smoke vents, enemies should have a difficult time targeting your vehicle. At the same time, the vehicle's job is to move ahead, seize objectives, or move towards enemy vehicles to allow for boarding actions. Hagar Freelord will lead the assault team of Hive Scum number 3 and 4, who will either board enemy vehicles or fight dismounted. Hagar Freelord's gunfighter ability will make him deadly at short ranges with his twin plasma pistols firing those off. Meanwhile, the Hive Scum with strength 4 attacks because of those flails, and their Stubguns and dum-dum rounds will also be very deadly as well, and they can also be pretty good at short range shooting as well. Now, lastly, Assault Fire Team number 2 consists of Hive Scum number 1 and Hive Scum number 2. This fire team's job is to flank enemies and engage them in close quarters battle. The Waster's Dirt Bike gives them movement 8 as well as the mounted condition, and with using the ride-by rules, they will be able to engage enemy targets with their flails, giving them additional bonuses to the strengths of their attacks. At the same time, their sawed-off shotguns are for self-defense and will be used in close-range shooting against their opponents. As the campaign develops, I suggest you get these fighters better weapons to protect themselves. Also use them to finish off your enemies with coup de grace as well. And this is why it's called the Mercator Umbras 1400 credit clanless Outcast gang. Now, the next gang I call the Ironhead Squad Prospector Outcast gang. They cost you 1,400 credits as well. You'll have an Underhive Outcast leader costing you 305 credits. This fighter will take the Resilient stat line. You'll give them the Gunslinger Archetype. They'll be equipped with Mesh Armor, Ironhead Melt-A-Gun, Ironhead Stubgun, as well as the Fast Shot ability. After that, you'll have 2 Underhive Outcast champions. Champion number 1 is going to cost you 210 credits with the Gunslinger Archetype. This person will also have Mesh Armor, Mining Laser, Ironhead Stubgun, as well as Trick Shot for longer range shooting. Underhive Champion number 2 will have 235 credits. This one will also have the Gunfighter Archetype. They'll be equipped with Mesh Armor as well as an Ironhead Flamer. They also have an Ironhead Stubgun as well as the Fast Shot ability, so they can shoot that Flamer twice. After that, you got 2 Outcast Hive Scum, who cost you 50 credits apiece, and they're equipped exactly the same with reclaimed autoguns and Ironhead Stubguns. So you will also have some Scum Racers in this one. You'll actually have 4 of them in this gang. Scum Racer number 1 is going to cost you 220 credits. They're driving a custom light vehicle with smoke vents and a mining laser. Scum Racer number 2 is going to cost you 85 credits with this custom light vehicle as well as an autogun. And Scum Racer number 3 will also cost you 85 credits with a custom light vehicle and an autogun as well. And then finally, Scum Racer number 4 is going to cost you 160 credits. This person has a custom walker vehicle with a transport bed, extra armor, nitro burners for +1 movement, as well as a boarding ramp. Now, this one, I'm not going to lie, it's inspired by the Leagues of Votan's Hurricane Pioneers miniatures for Warhammer 40k. These are the guys who are driving on the little hover bike Zamboni things, and because of that, if you love Ironhead weapons but you hate paying for Ironhead squats, then this is the Outcast gang for you. This gang features 4 vehicles in total, a walker to transport your non-mounted fighters, and the 3 light custom vehicles to hold up the 3 extra fighters on top of that. This gang is also extremely mobile, using vehicle weapons to cause most damage to their enemies. At the same time, your normal fighters not mounted on light vehicles will cause all kinds of chaos as well. And you can really grow into this gang, purchase your heavy weapons for your vehicles as time progresses. Now this gang consists of 2 fire teams, 1 support fire team, and 1 assault fire team. Your support fire team will consist of your Outcast leader, Champions 1 and 2, Outcast Scum number 1, and Outcast Scum number 2, as well as Scum Racer number 4. These fighters will be mounted upon the custom walker, and for now the vehicle acts as a transport vehicle for the heavy weapons carrying by its passengers. The leader will fire their Ironhead melted gun twice per activation, laying waste to most enemies and their vehicles. At the same time, Champion number 1 provides medium and long range combat support by using trick shot to fire their mining laser vehicles or individual enemies like leaders and champions. Now Champion number 2, Outcast Scum number 1, Outcast number 2, they can fight mounted or dismounted. Champion number 2 spams their fast shot ability to fire their Ironhead flamer twice per activation, while Outcast Scum number 1 and 2 move through and suppress with their auto guns. I suggest upgrading these fighters with better Ironhead weaponry as soon as possible, either Ironhead, auto guns, or bolters if you want to as well. Eventually, you should also purchase upgrades and weapons for your walker, depending on how you want to play. Now your assault fire team consists of Scum Racers 1, 2, and 3. This is your pursuit squad, and their objective is to zip around the battlefield, taking on your enemy's softer targets. Scum Racer number 1's mining laser will really hit your enemy's stronger vehicles, but as soon as possible, try to purchase heavy stubbers for Scum Racers number 2 and 3 to take out softer target choices. And you might want to upgrade these riders with versatile weapons over time. Flails are good choices, so are shock staves, but do whatever matches your playstyle. And this is what I like to call the Ironhead Squad Outcast gang. Alright, so the very last list is what I like to call the Road Warriors Paladite Enforcer Outcast gang. It costs you 1,400 credits to field it. So let's talk about the roster real quick. First of all, you're taking the Ashwood Stranger. It costs you 205 credits. This is the Dramatis Personae character, and you'll be assigning him the Survivor archetype. You're also going to give him an armored undersuit as well. He's got flak armor, custom Stubgun with dum-dum rounds, custom auto pistol with man-stopper rounds. You're going to give him the Gunfighter ability because he comes with that already with fast shot and hip shooting, and you're going to assign him the Nerves of Steel skill because of your Survivor archetype, because he's going to be getting shot at a lot. Now, your next purchase is going to be your Outcast Champion number 1. This guy's going to cost you 120 credits. He's got the Brawler archetype with mesh armor. He's got a Vigilance Pattern Assault Shield, as well as a Stubgun and the Bull Charge skill. And then you have your Outcast Champion number 2. It's going to cost you 110 credits. This fighter is going to got the Gunslinger archetype, mesh armor. They're also going to be purchased with a Subjugator grenade launcher with frag and stun grenades. They also have a Stubgun and the fast shot skill. Now then, you'll have 3 sets of 2 hive scum apiece. Outcast Scum number 1 and 2 cost 80 credits apiece, and both of them are armed with Enforcer bolt guns. Outcast Scum number 3 and 4 are going to cost you 90 credits apiece, and they're armed with Enforcer shotguns. And then Outcast Scum number 5 and 6 will cost you 55 credits apiece, and they're armed with stub guns and flails. Now for your transport, you're going to hire a Guild of Coin hauler, who's going to cost you 510 credits. This fighter is going to drive a Cargo 8 Rich hauler with nitro burners, Munitorium armor container, as well as twin storm bolters as well. Now this list lets you live out your Mad Max fantasies in the Ash Waste. If you love playing Paladite Enforcer weapons, but you hate playing for their base cost for their fighters, then this is the list for you. You'll have powerful Enforcer bolt guns, Enforcer shotguns, Subjugator grenade launchers, as well as storm bolters. And because you're operating from a Cargo 8 Rich hauler with Munitorium armor container, your Enforcer bolt guns and Enforcer shotguns will have an ammo roll of 2+, your Subjugator grenade launchers will have an ammo roll of 3+, and your storm bolters will have an ammo roll of 4+. So because of that, you'll be able to put a lot of firepower against your enemy's fighters and own the wasteland. Now, I highly suggest that you play defensively with this gang, remaining near your Cargo 8 Rich hauler for as long as possible for your ammo roll supports, as well as the firepower from the twin storm bolters. Now, this gang will consist of 3 fire teams, 2 assault fire teams, and 1 support fire team. Your assault fire team number 1 will consist of the Ashwood Stranger, Outcast Scum number 3, and Outcast Scum number 4. This fire team is designed for fighting dismounted. You can also use it for boarding enemy vehicles as well. The Ashwood Stranger makes an excellent point man for this team, using his Gunfighter ability and Quick Draw special rule to counter against enemy fighters. Meanwhile, Outcast Scum number 3 and 4 use their combat shotguns for great effect. Have them use shredder ammo to clear out enemy vehicles before boarding with those template attacks, or let loose with salvo rounds for rapid fire strength for automatic shotgun fire. Now, Assault Team number 2 will consist of Outcast Champion number 1, Outcast Scum number 5, and Outcast Scum number 6. This fire team is designed for boarding enemy vehicles. Champion number 1 takes point using their Assault Shield as cover, while Outcast Scum number 5 and 6 use their flails in close combat. Now, my suggestion to you is to upgrade your Hive Scum with Vigilance Assault patterns as soon as possible. Not only will this give them extra armor, but it also makes them more survivable in close combat as well. And then finally, you have your support fire team. That consists of Outcast Scum number 1, Outcast Scum number 2, and your Guild of Coin Hauler. And Daka is the name of the game for this fire team. They'll be putting out 6 rapid firing, strength 4, -1 AP, 2 damage attacks, and 24 inches every turn. These guys will be flinging lead around like it's nobody's business, and they also have 360-degree vantage points when they do so as well. Now, the Munitorium armor container keeps your weapons well fed at +2 ammo rolls for your bolt guns and 4+ ammo rolls for your storm bolters, so don't hesitate to open fire at your enemies. And when you're able, I suggest purchasing telescopic sights for your bolt guns and storm bolters, so that way there are +1 short range bonuses are applied at longer range shots, which is kind of nice as well. And this is what I like to call the Mad Max Road Warrior Paladin Knight Enforcer Outcast gang. Alright, so in conclusion, if you're looking for something with diversity and variety, then the Outcast gang is definitely for you. Even more competitive now with access to heavy weapons on your vehicles, so it makes it really, really nice as well. And you can do as many crazy combinations as you can imagine with this gang, and you're only limited by your imagination in most cases. Now, I will be doing delegation gangs later on in this series as well, so if you're looking for information about that, that is coming on the pike, so be aware of that. And at the same time, be aware of the saltiness of the balanced bandwagon, because those guys are going to be throwing all kinds of salt for you playing an Outcast gang. So with that being said, you guys, that's good for this one. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good for this week, guys. I'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.